Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Pathfinder Plays. And today I want to talk about some new features that Scum has implemented and other ones that will be coming up. And when I said in my last video that Scum is doing things that DayZ has not yet or needs to be modded in, I wasn't lying, and these upcoming features and features they have implemented are proof of that. Let's get into it. The first thing that I want to talk about is the PVE Zones, which I know what you guys are saying. What the heck is the point of a PVE zone? It's a PvP-based game. You can kill people, but this is all about server diversity and giving players a different experience. So server owners can give up to 10 different PVE zones, and this is great because you can change the radius, change the size, and you can then mix together more fluidly the players who are PvP centric and PvE centric, or RP even, and bring them together under the same roof. And that's something that you couldn't necessarily do because you have trolls who would kill the PvE players knowing that they would get fuming and then complain to the server owner about it, and then you have to deal with bans or whatever else. So now you can adjust many different settings in the PVE zones themselves. You can even have one massive PVE zone. And the settings you can change are boxing damage, melee weapon damage, throwing damage, projectile damage, explosive damage, including vehicle explosions and suicide puppet explosions, damage to bases, and damage to vehicles. And all this is fantastic. You can either block or allow, reduce the amount of damage done to all of these things. So you could essentially make player-on-player aggro null and void, which is fantastic for those people who want to go from single player to multiplayer and get their feet wet without fear of being absolutely annihilated by more experienced Scum veterans. They can have that experience of player interaction without the threat of dying immediately, but once they go past that PvE threshold, then they will have that risk. And it's really cool because the idea, at least on my server, for the PVE zones is that we have them scattered out. They're not too big across the map. We welcome PvE players, but we don't want to keep them so safe that they never have to leave. So they're very small, and if they want to interact, trade with other people, or travel from one PvE zone to the next, they will have to go outside their comfort zone, outside the safe zone, essentially, and make that trip. And they will have to fight wildlife, the puppets, and other players, obviously. So it's really cool. And that's really good for PvE players as well because it gives them a bit more story to tell to the other PvE players about what they survived or what they saw on their way over here to trade their goods or whatever else they're doing. So it's a really cool thing that will be utilized greatly in the future by many servers and currently is. Something that I mentioned in previous videos and I'll mention again now because it's finally in and implemented is the squad-based locks. And this is fantastic. So essentially you can set permissions for certain things like doors or chests or vehicles, even wardrobes as well, for certain members of your squad. So you can have like your top 3 guys in your squad, your more senior officers or squad members, they can have access to everything. These are the people that you trust. But the lower echelon people who you don't necessarily trust as much, or you have specific gear that you want solely to your top 3 guys, you can lock people out that are below a certain rank in your squad. So that's really, really awesome. You can even make your own chest if you're a lower squad mate and make it locked just to yourself, so you can have your legitimate own chest. So this actually does a lot. If you have your own specific vehicle that you don't want people to steal or take in your own squad, you can lock it to yourself. If you have a vehicle that you want to use for squad trips and you don't want that one new guy taking it out in accident, make it locked to where it's just you and your top 3 guys or whatever. This adds a whole different avenue of approach and organization, I guess, to the game, which is super important. Now, the ranks in the squad right now go from boss, underboss, enforcer, and then member. And it's important to note that whoever makes the item will always have access to that item, but you can place 2 kinds of lock access right now. And there's the underboss, which will have the underboss and then the boss have access to it. And then you have the member lock, which will have all ranks access to that. Some other things that are really, really exciting, and may not be exciting to some, but they're pretty exciting to me as a survival enthusiast for games. Wells, you can build wells in the game where you can find them. They are no longer infinite supply of water. They run out eventually, and you can check the amount that's remaining in the well by just holding down F and then selecting the check level option. But they will resupply over time as rain comes and other things like that. So that's pretty dope. Also, you can only build one well per flag placement, so you can't just place a ton of wells and try to game the system like that. Something else that I found very cool is that you can now spill out certain fluids from containers like a bottle of water and place other fluid into it. And this was the coolest thing ever, I think, because say you have a gas can that has like 3 uses in it, and it takes up so much inventory space, and you're not near a gas station, and it's just pretty much a hindrance to carry around, and they're heavy. You could simply pour the remainder of that into a 5 capacity bottle, and then you could just use that little bottle to fill up your tank, or just carry around bottles of gasoline if you want. And who knows what this could do in the future. Now that you can pour gasoline or alcohol into other containers, does this open up the way for Molotov cocktails now that this tech has been implemented into the game? I don't know. It's pretty dope. It's really, really cool. You can even use the check function to see what liquid is actually in the bottle to begin with, so you don't need to keep track of what fluids are in what bottle. You can simply use the check function and you'll know. Although I doubt that many people will use that if somebody's giving them a drink of, say, soda and there's actually gas in there, so you could totally have fun low-key poisoning somebody. Which is another fantastic option to have in this game. Also, something else that is not necessarily needed, but is really nice to have, especially for future uses whenever scent becomes a thing and animals and puppets can smell your stenchy clothes, is you can now wash yourself with the bars of soap while not being near a water source. You can use like bottles of water or wells or something like that. If you suck at lockpicking, which you now have to do for virtually all raiding and or armored cabinets in the game, including the police station and bunkers and airfields and obviously the supply drops, don't worry. You can now break into them using a crowbar, and this is affected by your strength and thievery skill. The higher they are, the easier and quicker you'll get into it, and the lower they are, the longer it will take, but you'll still get into it. However, it's important to note that doing this will damage your crowbar, obviously, and the items in the cabinet itself. So you kind of have to wonder if it's worth it or not. I guess it just depends on how badly you want what's in there. It's also important to note that this is noisy. I'm not sure what the radius is, but from the way they made it sound on the update, it's pretty loud. So players and puppets from around will probably hear you, so make sure your 6 is covered before you actually start doing this. And speaking of locked containers, the supply drop will now be locked. Yes, that is right. You can't just go in there and open everything up and take it so willy-nilly. You will now have to spend your time lockpicking, which adds a bit of a risk because you are spending more time than you would like at the supply drops, which are announced to everybody. So you are going to have to be quick about it, be selective at the very least, and make sure that you have a team with you to at least have some sniper spots up there on the hills overwatching you. And if not, you just gotta close that door, lockpick, and hope to God no one's waiting for you to come out. But there is a silver lining, kind of. Once 30 seconds hits, there is a clock inside the container itself, and it's counting down. And essentially what happens is, once 30 seconds hits, all the containers open up. And why this is important is because you now have 30 seconds to gather all the things you can until that 30 seconds is up and the whole container explodes. So be sure to get far away. That 30 seconds is not a long time, especially not a long time if you don't have a vehicle to drive away in. Base defenses. They have added some new zappers and locks and doors to the game. So first off, they've added single person doors. And this is great if you want to make, say, a maze system and you want to kind of confuse people. They're there and they're upgradable and it's pretty great. The locks, they have the actual locks and the lock protections. And the lock protections are great for those of you who don't know. They're called zappers, and There's 3 of them, and they do a tier-based damage, and it's pretty dope. The amount of zappers you can place on your doors varies on the type of door. So level 1 doors can have 2 slots for locks and 1 slot for zappers. Level 2 doors will have 2 slots for locks and 2 slots for zappers. And level 3 doors will have 3 slots for locks and 2 slots for zappers. And then pre-built doors and cabin doors can have 3 slots for locks and 1 slot for zappers. So all that is fantastic for base defense and will really make you think about what you need to build and where. And on the conversation of the actual zappers themselves, they have gotten more types of zappers. So there's now a level 1 zapper, a level 2 zapper, and a level 3 zapper. And it goes from basic, medium, advanced. And the level 1 does 0.5 damage per fail. The medium one does 1 damage per fail. And then the advanced does 1.5 damage per fail. And that may not sound like a lot, but if you have gold locks on there and the failure happens every time you break a pick lock, every time you break a lockpick, that really adds up over time and obviously could cause bleeding, which then compounds the effect of health lost. Something that the community has been asking for a while now is legitimate mine detectors, because until recently, people have always been needing to use the blueprint scam to find if things are buried around a certain area that they're suspicious of, where they just hover around the blueprint placement of a box, and then it'll turn red if they can't place it, and they're like, oh, well, there's something there, I can't place it, and then they bury it up or they avoid it because they think it's a mine. But now you actually have 2 kinds of metal detectors. You have an improvised one and a military grade one, and the only differences between them are essentially the improvised can't be repaired and the military can be with the electrician toolkit. The military has bigger range and the military holds bigger battery life. So obviously the military is better, but in a pinch, the improvised will do just fine. And how it works is you'll equip it, you'll turn it on, and you'll start walking around, waving it around like that old guy on the beach that you see every now and again in Florida, and then it'll beep quicker the closer you are to metallic objects under the ground. So that's pretty cool. You can use it to find chests, mines, buried items of any kind. It's going to be fantastic. And lastly, something that is probably more important than any of the other things I've listed here right now that is coming either at 0.5 or soon after is the new loot tables that Tomislav and the other developers have introduced. I'm going to read it verbatim so you guys can kind of get a grasp for what's going on here. Tomislav said on Twitter that I'm into the classification of the loot. Hopefully it'll fix current issues and provide better control over the loot. Also, some new add-ons will be included, like customizable reset timers for each spawner class, making specific loot more or less available to players on the server. For example, you'd be able to set respawning time of SVDs to 100 hours, while less important loot like metal scraps could be respawned each 20 minutes. Also, you can be able to choose if server reset will influence spawners or not. And he's absolutely right. This adds a whole new variable to the game, and he's giving every server owner, all the admins, the ability to change the spawn rate of all their items, the spawn amount of all their items, the spawn location of all their items. It's going to be absolutely insane. This changes the game so much. If you're a hardcore server and you want military weapons to be minimal, you can now do that. You can now do that besides just either increasing or decreasing the loot. You can increase less important items like basic survival items, and you can decrease military grade items, or you could increase them into a certain location and decrease them elsewhere. So you can put all the high tier military items in like the D4 bunker or something like that, where it's like the hardest to get into, and all the other ones will maybe have something, a really low respawn chance. It's just phenomenal to me. If you're a high loot server and you're having performance issues, you can now decrease the spawns of lesser important items and increase the military loot items, because that's what everyone goes to anyways for PvP. I can't explain the changes that this will have for the game, but if you own a server, you know that people always complain about not being able to find this, something being too rare, and what this will do is will allow you to kind of grind with confidence. And I said this in my last live stream that I did, is that grinding with confidence is great. That's what's addicting in video games. If a video game has you grinding for certain items or recipes, and you don't have confidence that you're going to get them, that's an issue and you're going to stop playing. But if they have a system like this where server owners can directly affect what spawns when and where and to what amount, you can have confidence that you will get it in that area eventually. You can grind with confidence. And that's something that I'm very much looking forward to. And this could add a whole bunch of different elements to the game that I can't think of right now. I'm excited to see what the community does with this tool and others coming up. And I want to know your guys' thoughts too. What do you guys think about all these changes that Scum has implemented or will implement? We already know what else is coming with 0.5. We know the fishing is coming. We know the boats of various kinds are coming, both raft, hand-built, and then factory-made boats of various sizes. We know we can do harpoons as well, and spotlights are coming to the boats. We know that we can have the map expansion coming in. There's windmills and crap like that going on there. We know that the injury system is being updated, where you have a 3-tiered injury system now with muscular damage, surface damage, and guts and bone, with various different ways of fixing each of those. We know that you're going to be getting over 50 different sicknesses and diseases in the game. There's so many things that are coming. Like, the entire life of Scum has been building up to this moment right here. Obviously the main goal is 1.0, but the amount of stuff coming in 0.5 cannot be understressed. It is a lot. I'm anticipating lots of bugs, and so should you, but with the amount of stuff that they are delivering and have already delivered in anticipation for 0.5, and once 0.5 hits, it's mind-boggling, and I'm okay with it. I'm here for it because I see they're hustling, they're grinding, they're digging, and they're getting the job done and making a survival game that is appealing to broader audiences. And you see that with the numbers. 0.5 hasn't even hit yet, and their numbers have increased, almost doubled monthly. And no, it's not as much as DayZ, and that's fine. You know, DayZ is DayZ, and it should be. Scum is Scum, and it should be. But Scum is still maturing, and it will attract a bigger and broader audience because of the survival aspect that it gives, and the controls it gives to its server admins. And mods haven't even been implemented yet. And who knows if mods will even be necessary because of the amazing base vanilla experience that the game will already produce. But anyways, guys, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I hope you guys appreciated this video and you learned something new. If you did, leave me a comment telling me what it was and say hi. I appreciate all those comments, and I try to respond to all of them if I have time. Thank you to my channel members. You guys are fantastic as always, and I appreciate your generosity. Thank you to those who donate during my streams. I also appreciate you guys. You guys are fantastic as well. And for the rest of you for sticking in here till the end, if you like scares, survival, and scavenging, consider hitting that subscribe button, that bell button, that like button, and share this video with your friends. And I will see you all in the next one. Path out.